Before I start, I have to confess I'm not the expert in the food and beverage, as I said. Second, I'm not really that technical in the sense of talking about all the details of the IoT. Again, I will really try to talk about how to come from the customer angle and merge with technology business side. Before I start, I just want to show one video first. Yeah, this video is not directly related to this topic about smart manufacturing, but as you can see, what we do, what we manufacture, what we produce, what we deliver, in the end of the days, need to be consumed by the consumers. And you can see the consumer from this video is very different from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago. And then this is a global phenomenon, but even in China, I borrow some of the slides from my colleague Niels. You can also see the way we do the commerce is highly digital now. The people buying things not only from the physical store, 56% they are buying from the online side, and especially in China. I was in Shenzhen yesterday attending a large conference organized by Alibaba Group. Accenture and Alibaba Cloud, we announced some joint collaboration. But you can see Alibaba, they run the Taobao and Tmall. They call the November 11 single day. They create this festival. In this single day, the number of transactions is phenomenal. And I think last year, they hit a record of $40 billion of transactions just on one day. And a lot of things are even changing so fast. No longer just go to the website to buy things. They will use a mobile phone, right? And any kind of a mobile device in future, doing the purchasing, doing the discovering, and doing the other piece of the relate to the commerce. And the way this is also driven a lot by the consumer behavior, as I was elaborating in the panel discussion. Many times we see, give me what I want when I want it. This is what I see now, right? So a lot of time when you want it, at least you can go to website, you can find the nearest store, pick the right place. Right? So this is, I think, already happening now. But is this enough? Right? So one example is, I always asking myself, do I really understand what I want, right? So, funny story was, I always think I'm very adventurous in the sense of choosing the food. Anything I like to try, whether the spicy food, whether the Cantonese food, Western food, and so on. But one day my wife telling me, oh, you always pick the only thing, because she observed when I go to travel, I always stay in like a Shangri-La hotel. When I go to breakfast, first thing the orange juice, then followed by some kind of noodle, then followed by omelets, finishing with the fruits. Always very routine. Even on the fruits side, always pick a pineapple, one watermelon, a few others. So I didn't realize, because then I traced back. I did a survey with one marketing agency telling me what's my the behavior. And the report was totally different from what my wife told me. Then I start to reflect myself. This is something we need to all think about, because a lot of things starting from this understanding our customer. Even ourselves may not understand ourselves enough. How can those marketing agencies and others really truly represent finding what customer wants? And then we'll have a ripple factor in the manufacturing side, what product we want to deliver, what kind of personalization you want, right? So that's why I think the trend is really going to give me what I want when I need it. This is tomorrow. I think sometimes there are overwhelming things, especially in the digital age, coming to you so often, right? So a lot of understanding is going to the extreme. Everything digital is better, but more choice is better. Is that really the case, right? So we want to be more simple, but really something we need. And then in future, beyond this, we call it nirvana, right? Give me what I want before I want it. Really, this is important. May not be just on the product side, but in the same case, you go to a restaurant. I think sometimes you may have the similar experience like I have. In case you want to have waiters to service you, a lot of time, if you don't want them, you see a lot of them center around your table, right? And you become really uncomfortable. But whenever you want them, you look around, nobody noticing you, right? So especially in China restaurant, this is not like a tip-based kind of incentive mechanism. This is happening a lot. But really understanding what customer needs before they really anticipate. This really crucial for the consulting industry I am in, because as a consultant in Accenture, we are not smarter than our clients. We know not more things in the particular industry like our clients in CPG. But I think one key thing I learned in the consulting side, you always need to anticipate, and you need to be a step ahead. I think in this digital commerce side, this is also true. So how do we really go beyond the traditional understanding of the consumer behavior and so on, really go into that? And this leads to the new wave of the past purchase, which is a foundation we call the digital commerce, right? So how do you really look at the loyalty side, how the consumer discover the goods, because a lot of traditional ways of finding the goods is already changing, right? This is can be from the traditional media, can be from social media. Even sometimes when you watch a video on the Youku or YouTube, you discover things you may not realize that. And how do you compare? Do you compare just based on pricing? Do you compare multi-facts, or do you compare by your experience? When you say compare experience, how do you quantify that, right? So how do you capture that? And how do you consider? Is it 2-step, is it 3-step? Everybody is different, right? So the consideration process is also very important. Then you lead to the purchase, right? Purchase is only the final action, but this is not the only one. The whole thing is really integrate together. But what I want to highlight here is those things you need to really understanding the consumer behavior in each step, and you need to use data or digital mechanism as a way to do that. And the key thing, you can see a lot of bubble around that. This is called the micro moments. If you take one thing away from this slide, I want you to really pay attention to this. Because in our purchasing or commerce decision making, it's not just one step. There are so many elements. And there is important of those micro moments, maybe 1 second, maybe 2 seconds, maybe explicit, maybe implicit in a lot of thinking. So those things really finally decide which one you want to buy, how long you want to stick to that, whether you want to change. So with that, that's why in the digital commerce side, we see the trends. It's really the micro moments deliver the unique experience, differentiate from you, from me, from everybody, right? So how do you capture this and enable the purchasing decision, really looking at not just traditional one-dimensional value chain, but really from different angle, multi-dimensional thing. need to be more omni-channel. Just not online shop doesn't go all the way, but you need to create multiple channels to engage the customer, understand them. The channel is not only for the deliver the goods, making the sales, but also the channel important to capture all those micro moments, understanding the customer. So I spend so much time on this. That's why it's very different from the smart manufacturing topic or IoT topic. But the key thing I want to deliver here is whenever you think about the manufacturing, you need to think about in the holistic point of view. What end game you want to deliver, what our consumer wants to have. Then you can, thinking back, understanding what type of product we want to design, what type of the manufacturing facility we want to enable. How do you locate all your manufacturing facility? Do you do yourself? Do you do ecosystem ways of doing that? As I will elaborate, how do you enable this type of platform economy, so on, right? So this really drives a lot of conversation when we look at this smart manufacturing site. So, and whoever can do this better can win the game. And whoever in this kind of ecosystem can understand and capture better value for that can also win in this competition. As I said, in the platform economy, is no longer compete by what kind of asset you have, what kind of resource you have, create a barrier, but really, how do you understand the consumer, then have a differentiation in delivering that. So there are certain things I think made just for your reference, right? So hyper-localization, the things you cannot one size fits all. And I think in the food and beverage industry, this is extremely important. You may have a global brand, but how do you localize? I'm not an alcoholic, but I like drinking, right? So I like beers. So I think beer is one thing really localized, probably too localized. When I grew up in China, I didn't realize it because I was young, but when I came back, you see all those local brands you never heard of, right? So, and a lot of things I would taste really doesn't really like what I taste, like Heineken or those things, because the alcohol, the percentage is very low. They like the light beer and so on. So those preferences really drive a lot of how do you localize your brand, localize your product in order to, not so much to fit the market, because in the end of the day, we want to drive the behavior change and market change. But the first thing you need to understand, why is this so, where it is, right? Then you need to know how to drive the, and I already see over the last 2 years, the beer industry changed so fast. Now you have all kind of different variation, different type of beers. I was surprised going back to the hometown near Shanghai. Traditionally in this family reunion, people would drink local alcohol. It's called the rice wine. It's different from Japanese sake, but also with the rice, a little bit sweet and so on. But this year, I saw a lot of people drinking not only the traditional white liquor, but also red wine. This is very popular now, right? People are already very sophisticated. And also beers. And the beers, they like to drink not the lager beer, but also those stout, those black beer and so on. More variety. I do see those changing. But in order to capture that, that's why a lot of things really need to take into consideration. How do you build a partnership? How do you seamless between online and offline? And the one area I want to touch now is really on the IoT, because in order to enable those things, you need to understand your consumer. And you understand every step of the process, how does that link to the end game to understand your consumer, deliver value to our consumer. And I will say, it's not IoT, but it's really the data. The data itself capture who I am. I may not know better than myself by those data. So there is a concept already emerging called the customer genome. We do the customer segmentation. I'm middle-aged man, Chinese, what, so on. But now they say you need to be more sophisticated than that, not just this kind of hypothetical kind of category. It's like in your genome, because you have your DNA create who you are. So now there are people thinking behavior data, your personality, any of those unstructured data may also relate to defining your behavior, your preference, and so on. So IoT is also the enabling technology or the platform allow you to capture the data, analyze the data, but also using the data to drive the efficiency along this value chain. So already a lot of talk about the IoT, Daniel and Gianni already talked. That's why I save a lot of time. I can spend more time on the commerce side. But I still want to come back to the key topic. In order to deliver this kind of digital commerce, how do we look at IoT, and especially in the smart manufacturing context? So to me, IoT is really connect, compute, and communicate, those 3C, right? So I don't need to further elaborate, and I think the words say itself. And the many wordings, the findings already saying because the timing is now, why, and so on. There are so many, I think Gianni already elaborate why we could not do it 5 years ago or 7 years ago. And I think key thing definitely, to me, there are two things. Probably one is cost is definitely one thing. This is related to the Moore's law, right? In semiconductor, for Intel, the company I used to work with, driving a lot of innovation, why the computer now in the laptop can compare to the mainframe many years ago, because the semiconductor side follows this Moore's law. Moore's law saying every 18 months or 24 months, the density of a semiconductor chip on the chip can be double. In the same time with same price, so the price will be half. So this really drive a lot of adoption of the not only PC, notebook, but now the smartphone and so on, right? So this even go further into those IoT, the sensor, not only the sensing side, but also computing side. And this is really, IoT to me is not just a kind of enabling technology, but itself is not just sensing or connect. The computing is really important. As I said, when we say the understanding the data, you need to compute that. You really need to segment that. You need to analyze that. So this really gives the IoT a new way of possibility. So this is a history of the computing. But again, we are in the edge of not only smaller, faster, but more distributed, right? So virtualized, so like cloud computing, this is really happening everywhere. And, but in the same time, I still feel IoT is complicated because people ask about what's a barrier and so on. And to me, the key thing is because it's small, because it's distributed, sometimes easily being fragmented, right? So if you manage one store, it's easy. If you manage 10 stores, more difficult. If you manage 10 stores with all kinds of products, are difficult. If you manage 10 stores in multiple countries, become more complex. So use the same analogy. IoT is the same because you have sensors, all kinds of sensors, location, motion, light, heat, but now also many of IoT also need to be implanted or embedded into the body, right? So you need to temperature, heart rate, all those things become complicated. The device, not only the number, but the device location, the use case, regulatory requirements, those are also complicated. The network itself, because now it's a multi-channel already, right? So the fixed line, the Wi-Fi, the wireless, Bluetooth, but there are also new way of communication coming up, whether to be the NFC or other things, right? So the network becomes also very diversified, but also converged. In order to capture the value of IoT, there are so many, the key thing is the API, because the data itself is one thing, then you can analyze the second thing, but the data need to be used by machine, by people, by application. So API is crucial because you cannot transport data from everywhere. You only open through the API. And the API need to be open-based, need to really enable not only the technical linkage, but also allow the mechanism to be monetized. I think you may know a key thing for like Alibaba, not only the e-commerce transactions they have, they accumulate so many data. And this data is a huge value. But in order to capture that, they develop a lot of API around that. So they provide those services back to the people or all those merchants on the Taobao. So they know, use the data, they know, oh, is this my product selling well? How do I compare my peers? How do I optimize the line of the product I should do, right? So those things need to be enabled by backend API. It's easy to say, but difficult to do because it need to both sides to agree, and also there is a technical side, but there is also a commercial side. The application, a lot of to develop, as I said, is highly fragmented, and the data itself. So, but no matter what, in the end of the day, it's driven by the demand. So if we do have the demand all the way from the consumer side to the manufacturer, logistic, and the store owner, so I'm very optimistic. Even we are still not there yet, but step by step, we overcome issue one by one, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but this will happen, and this will really change a lot of ways, not only in this industry, but many other industries. Like we can see the industry, we can see different industry already spearheading in this IoT adoption. And in the end of the day, it's not only the technology, but also the business practice. In the vehicle side, already you see not only electric vehicle, Tesla is a connected vehicle, right? So not only inside the vehicle, but how do you break the boundary into that, linking to the consumer. So now in the Tesla, we start by working with a Visa company in the car. So can you introduce insurance? Can you introduce commerce when you are driving, right? So a lot of things become really a new way of thinking possibility, engaging the clients. So then what's about the smart manufacturing? Because IoT, as I said, there were vehicle side, transport, there were other areas. There was one area called the connected operation. So how do you really, under this kind of background, how do you do your manufacturing differently? So this smart manufacturing, I don't want to repeat a lot of things. I think, Daniel, you already talked about, Johnny talked about Industry 4.0. I'm not the expert in this area, but certainly many people already see that. And I was visiting one of a client in Changsha. It's a huge company. They have a large factory. They are looking at how to bring this to the more smarter, right? So not only this client, but there is dozens of clients I visit also looking at the similar kind of trends. But a few things I just want to pick. One is driven by this physical and digital blur. A lot of things manufacturing always asset heavy, right? So, but now people are mobile, a lot of things is data driven. So it's no longer just physical boundary, but with a digital convergence. And the last but not least is also shift from products to service. When we talk about the manufacturing, we always think what do we manufacture? We manufacture products. But now the things need to be different. So I use probably one example, Michelin. Michelin is a tire company, as you know. They deliver tire. It's understandable. But now they are thinking differently. Can they do more than tire? So what we have worked with them is also interesting. In the tire side, a lot of not only the commercial passenger car, but more on the truck. So truck for tire, the consumption much higher. Traditional Michelin sell a lot of tire in this space. But for now they are thinking, can we not only selling tire, but we can work with the fleet, truck fleet management company in a more closer way, understanding how those tires are used. Because now traditionally they only do the maintenance after sales service, right? But now they need to be more proactive. And this is a huge pain point from those fleet manufacturing management company. So what they did, we work with them is in the tire you have this IoT, RFID, those components. So when Michelin sell the tire, they sell a total solution to the fleet company, not the individual truck driver. So using those track and tracing, so they can understand how the tires are used, how the trucks are used, what time they drive, how many miles they drive, when do they go to maintenance. So they can do predictive modeling in order to stock the right tire before those trucks are in trouble. So they said the second thing, they can also further measure or track the truck drivers' behavior. Because for the fleet management company, really important, truck driver follows those standards, right? They don't do of course, the drinking, drunk driving, but also a lot of issues, they drive too long, they don't take a regular kind of stop. So those really increase the accident, but also affect the tire performance, right? So with this, so they can further track the truck behavior. Also allocate the fleet into the right location, optimize that. So with that, they offer as a total solution to the fleet company rather than just selling tire. But of course, in addition to that, they're also setting up the service center in the nationwide in order to bring those anchor point to those. So again, this is just one example how some of those things in the smart manufacturing, you need to think beyond just a product. What type of service can attach to that? Same for the beverage or the food industry, right? So later I will use one example just to elaborate on that. And I think some other areas, of course, there are new technology to be used in this space, like Airbus. We have been working with them also when they do not only the manufacturing side, when they assemble, how do you use like augmented reality? I think Gianni also mentioned about using glass. I think you also elaborate a lot. Bosch has a huge capability on that. How do you leverage some of them, pick the right area, and you want to change and see the initial return, right? So, and the manufacturing side, not only in the factory side, but also need to look beyond factory, but also like in the agriculture. I think in the panel discussion, I share one example about the Australia. When you do the IoT, you cannot just chasing farmer by farmer, but how do you aggregate and really create a platform, allow multiple, dozens or thousands of them to leverage on that. I think this, to Yongchen's point, this also can bring the price point really low enough, allows this to be sustainable. As you can see, I want to share some last part of my slides about smart manufacturing, what we see, and how can we address that. The promise, we all understand. There are huge promise, whether globally, whether in China, right? So government also pushing for that. But the pace of the progress is even more important. How do you look at different elements? Before you move, you need to think, right? So there is an area you need to think about the important to control your pace, how fast you want to go. Same for a lot of my discussion with my clients. Whenever they want to digital transformation, I say, before you want to digital outside, you need to look at how much digital insight you have. Are you ready to do that? Right? So those are areas I just want to give a reference. When you look at the progress, how do you control your pace? What level of investment you have? It's always starting from whether you have enough investment, not enough, but also how do you prioritize, right? If you put $1 in different buckets, how do you do that? The ability to align operation technology and the information technology, that's the second thing. A lot of smart manufacturing, you may be very advanced in the plant, in the factory, but if not linking the operation technology side with your ERP or those systems, then the value is a compromise. So I think this is really important, your process alignment and so on. The affinity to the technology change. So whether you have the ready talents or skill set or the previous foundation, right? Before you run, you need to walk, right? So what's the foundation in the technology base? And the speed to reskill the workforce. Again, this issue I think one guest bring up this morning, right? So, and also the security solution. Really, whenever we do the manufacturing side, the security safety is always a top issue. And then the journey, I think the second, I just highlight some of the lesson we learned by working with our clients for your reference. Always need to see the near-term, long-term, low-hanging fruits and so on. And I think many already discussed by Daniel and Gianni. operational efficiency is the first thing you really can do. Before you move to the new product and services side, then you really can look at the outcome-based economy and for the autonomous pool economy. So it's not like just one goal, but you need to look at what's the journey you want to create. And this is a last slide. Even too busy, but I do believe this slide was digesting or reading, right? Even myself, each time I read, I have a different point of view. But just let me simply elaborate. What is this slide? From your manual static, how do you go to the self-organizing, dynamic, demand-driven, right? So this is really the characteristic of the two extremes. I wouldn't know, probably Daniel knows better, whether this is Industry 3.0 or 4.0 or even further. But certainly people see this is a trend, right? We want to move this way. But there are multiple dimensions, multiple considerations you need to think. This is what the slide tells us. In the equipment or the asset side, how do you really look at the maintenance, the connect portion? How do you do the monitor, the condition, the notification side? There are different stages of the autonomous or moving to this to B stage in the equipment itself, the asset itself, right? Because still, no matter what, how light your asset will be, you still need to deal with that, right? So the second is the workforce side. Again, you really look at the different aspects all the way from the human operating machine, the basic skill set, whether they can have operate the specialized robots machines, right? How do you augment between the machine and the people? So this is also really important. Under the training aspects, right? So a lot of things will be really fast, the workforce retraining and so on, that's the thing. But more and more, you will also get into the situation awareness assistant. Not everything can be trained ahead of time. So when we do go from this way to that way, allow the capability to deliver those assistance real-time on need as we deliver those value to our consumer. Same for our workforce, right? So those aspects also really important. Then the third dimension really about the materials and supply chain. So I think I don't want to go into each detail, but I would really like to share these slides with everybody, and I think would be good if you can just take a, and I would be very happy to follow up any of them if you have any questions. But last, let me just 7 minutes more, just finishing this is really happening, and we need to start from now. And a lot of things, message I have is whatever we're thinking about manufacturing, you need to linking back to the end game, what kind of consumer experience you want to enable. So some example, I won't go into detail in the commerce side, but I do want to use 1 minute on this, like Heineken. As I like drinking, I like beers. I like beers in different settings, different type of beers at home, especially in stadium, in the bars. And how do you create? This is another way of manufacturing. It's no longer you manufacture all the things you deliver, but it's a distributed way, right? Can you develop or design something like connected car like this, right? Maybe not truly manufactured. Imagine if you put into the stadium, allow you to have a more personalized and more fresh beer and those consumption with the right temperature and so on. This make a huge difference. And one thing I do feel is one big difference to me is I like icy beer. But one thing I came to China, every time you order beer, you need to make sure, tell them it's icy beer. Because the norm is a normal room temperature, right? So, and I think for people when they really go into those stadium, different settings, understanding different preference, and moving your manufacturing capability on the edge is something everybody should consider. So with that, I just finished with one video, last point. This is so-called the store of future we did in the Milan Expo last year. So really want to showcase what will be possible when we deliver differentiated consumer experience in future. Again, would be very like you to take a look at this, not only video, but have a more information we would very much like to provide. Thank you.